I'm not quite sure the way that the panel have responded would be quite the way I understand what the political classes, which would be how Peter Orwell defines them, which includes some MPs and some members of the media, but not all MPs. It's really the kind of, the privileged political class, the the kind of people who've been policy once and then end up becoming MPs and kind of follow that progression. I did some work on my blog and discovered a link between the expenses scandal and the likelihood of the likelihood of an MP having been involved in the expenses scandal and the safety of an MP's seat. And it was kind of picked up a little bit by the national media. But I just wonder, there's been quite a lot of talk about potential electoral reform in order to try and do something about the safe seats. And obviously the Labour government did talk about alternative vote, but that isn't actually proportional anyway. And even that's been ditched in the wash-up. And it's starting to feel to me as if this opportunity for reforming the electoral system for the Commons is starting to slip through our fingers. I wonder what the panel think about that, and also whether there's a risk that the expenses scandal might actually cause the political class, as Osborne would define it, to become even stronger, because you may be less likely to get people from outside of the kind of the political in crowd wanting to stand for Parliament in the current environment.
Okay, let's take one more question and then we'll put it to the questions to the panel.
Thank you. My name is Claire Core. I didn't quite make the long list. I was writing as Andromeda, and I suspect the reason may be because my stuff won't be something that the Liberal left would be comfortable with. Anyway, on the question of politics, I think possibly one of the reasons why people are disengaged from politics is that politicians themselves don't actually have much free speech to speak their own minds about anything. And the reason for that means that they bore us. They don't say anything that we want to talk about because of political correctness. They can't, stray from the party line, and people haven't. We don't really expect our politicians to be whiter than white. It's just that we don't like them to be guilty of boring us to death with their loudness and their refusal to say anything that we might want to hear.
So is that your question?
My question really is whether Meg Russell agrees with it or not.
Okay, so I think the questions really is sort of this chance for political reform or reform of the parliamentary system sort of slipping away from us, and is the net result perhaps that a politicised class will grow up that excludes more people, in fact, than it involves, and our politicians are not actually free to speak their minds. So perhaps we could kick off with...
Well, I would like to come in on it.
Hang on a second. We kick off on that last question of politicians free to speak their mind, because the question was actually directed at Meg. So let's kick off with that one first.
I think they speak their minds more than we probably give them credit for, but when they're doing that they're not in the media spotlight. I mean, there's quite a lot of independent action actually that goes on within Parliament, in the corners of debates that the media isn't watching and that there isn't room to broadcast and so on. And the committee, which I work for, that you mentioned, the committee chaired by Tony Wright on reform of the House of Commons, made proposals to ensure that backbench MPs got more control over the parliamentary agenda in the House of Commons, and also reforms that have been agreed to free select committees from the power of the party whip, so that in the next Parliament, select committee chairs are actually going to be elected by the whole House. The whips will not be able to any longer control who gets those positions, and I think they will become, as a consequence, much more outspoken and independent, and I think that is a good thing. I think there are some spaces for this which are, perhaps bigger than we think, but I agree they need to become bigger, and that's a lot what the Wright Committee is about.
The second question: do you think that the momentum for broader parliamentary reform actually of our voting system is kind of slipping away from that?
Well, I think that all hangs on the outcome of the election. I mean, we're in a very interesting, very open election, aren't we? One outcome, Labour victory. One set of reforms, maybe. One outcome, Conservative victory. They do actually have quite a long list of reforms. They're not the kind of things you've got in mind. They're certainly not PR. but they have a list of reforms about Europe and all sorts of other things. Other outcomes, hung Parliament, Liberal Democrats supporting either Conservatives or Labour, all sorts of things might happen. So